consider the lilies and consider the birds, which is where we are today in our Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6:25. So let's turn there together. Matthew 6:25. I'll read it and then we'll keep referencing back here as we go. It's a long chunk, but we'll do this together. Therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what will you eat or drink, or about your body, what will you wear? Is not life more than food and body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet the Heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worry, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about your clothes? See the flowers of the field, how they grow? They don't labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what should we wear? For the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own. I want to just set this up a little bit today because when we read something like that says don't worry, right? That's like telling a woman in labor, just don't have a baby. It's part of the, we're there, right? Worry is part of the human experience. You have to understand the context of this teaching for Jesus, right? It's about anxiety about worry. And it's this context that we talked about last week with this message of idolatry. So we're going to tie this whole thing together. But it's not, don't just worry. It's part of the human experience to worry. It's poignant and pointed to tie into last week's message. We'll get it all together. What Jesus is doing is he's challenging the motivations behind why we do the things that we do, right? So last week, right, don't do these things for the praise of people, right? Don't pray, all these different things. That's a natural inclination of the human heart. But our desire, our needs to be needed, often turns those things that could be good into vain pursuits. This is kind of the last couple weeks summed up. So our need to be praised, right? Our need to be loved, it can turn into a need to be exalted. Wrong motivations rob us of that intimacy. So we're going to continue that idea now into this idea about worry. If you're driven by the needs of praise for people, then naturally you're going to turn to the world for ultimate satisfaction. The bottom line, right? If we're gonna have to choose a master, right? If you pick the wrong one, your heart gets broken. So now he's going to deal with this outcome when you pick the wrong master, right? The false gods, the idols that tend to be really fickle with us, because it's really hard to please false gods. I think they're really difficult to keep happy. And if you're the center of your entire existence, it's hard to keep you happy too. So if you turn to your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend, your partner, your wife, whatever you want to do, if you turn them into a god, right? They can't handle that kind of devotion, right? As much as I think Ashley is the greatest thing that's ever existed on the entire planet, she's not even in here. See, I'm just saying it, and I mean it, but she's not here I'm heaping praise on her, right? As much as I believe that and I know that, she can't maintain that picture I have of her as being the most perfect, amazing human forever. At some point, she's going to let me down. It's hard. False gods are fickle, right? It's hard to keep that perfect image in your head. It's a challenge to maintain it for her, to keep that satisfied, because once you do, there's the fear of losing it, of it being taken away, or of not actually achieving it. So if it's looking up to a person, if it's having the best of whatever, if it's this person makes me happy or this idea makes me happy, that thing will change, it'll move, it'll erode, it'll fade away. And so we suffer from this idolatry, all of us at some level, and we take these gods that are hard to please, we take these ideas that we learn about these things that are just hard to maintain, and we apply them to God, big G. And so we end up with this weird picture. So again, think like a celebrity, people who would do absolutely anything to see the person live. I've said, like, people probably used to like punch people and stand in line and push people out of the way to go see I can't even think of a band right now. Madonna. Huh? The Beatles. Well, Paul McCartney, I don't know. It's still He's still getting, we'll get there. But think like Madonna, people like shoving people out of the way to go. Britney Spears, you just like little girls would upturn their piggy banks to try to get tickets for it. And now, I don't think Britney's having sellout crowds anymore. There's something goes wrong. They fall from the grace. They're not the pinnacle anymore. And then it's whatever. The one that I see right now is, of course, Taylor Swift. Everyone's going crazy to buy Taylor Swift tickets. They've got the dinosaurs in Indianapolis at the Children's Museum have friendship bracelets that say Taylor Swift on them. It's really great. And then she makes a comment in the political realm, and now there's endless videos of people burning her albums in the front of in the street and these things. People are going to take falls from grace. What you thought was an idol will fail you at some point, whether you agree with them or not. It's really intense. We put these things onto it. It becomes very intense. Sports fans, notoriously horrible at this. I'm a Colts fan and a Vikings fan. It's not going well. Okay, it's not going well so far. Well, the Vikings is fine, but it gets really intense. And we take this heartbreak that we have when these things fail us, and we take that same kind of view of these unpredictable things, and we apply it to Jesus, and we begin to see our faith in this same sort of way of like, does he really love me? Are his intentions towards me actually good? Because I'm going through difficulty right now, and I'm worried and I'm concerned about it because other things when this happens means I'm being failed by them. Do you see how we apply this now to it? We start to have worry, we start to have these things, we go, maybe Jesus doesn't actually blank, 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 blank. And so it creates these anxieties, and it creates all these different tendencies of the human heart to make God in our image rather than us being made in his image. If you think all the way back to Genesis 3, right? We're made in the image of God to reflect relationship, this whole series we had. But Adam's and Eve's sin was saying, I want to create God in my image when they bit from the fruit, to know what good and evil was, redefining God. This is the tendency of the human heart in the fall, to create God in our image. So we take these things we learn about our experiences, we apply it to him, and we're completely lost now. So how often we view God when our performance is not what it ought to be is that we're quickly disposed of. So as soon as I don't uphold what it is God's asked me to do, as soon as I fail to follow through with it, I feel like I can be disposed of as quickly as we dispose of those false gods. And so when we think of God in that way, that we're quickly disposed of, we have this anxiety that builds into our relationship with Jesus. It's this all-time high, this anxious feeling of like, maybe I'm not doing everything I need to do to achieve it, to stay on the good graces. So keep this context of idolatry around, right? It's about giving your affections to things that you don't have control of. So it's giving your affections and making things supreme in this world that you have absolutely zero control of. And so definition of worry, I think we use worry pretty loosely today. So let's look exactly what it is. So of course the pinnacle for the defining things in the entire universe is the Oxford Dictionary. So I've gone ahead and found it for you. Oxford Dictionary is to give way to anxiety or unease, to allow your mind to dwell on actual or potential that's not real, or problems that may or may not happen. It's synonyms: to be concerned, to be anxious, to agonize, to overthink, to panic, to lose sleep, to get worked up, to stress, and to torment yourself. I think most of us have had an experience like this one time or another. And psychologists use this term. It's like turning your brain into thinking it like a computer. And it's this idea of bandwidth to help you make sense of what worry does to your brain. And so your brain only has so much computing power. There's only so much mental bandwidth you can actually work with. And worry has a way of taxing that bandwidth and causing a breakdown to where your mind becomes so taxed with the problems that it's experiencing that it cannot really think or do anything else. Instead of moving forward, you're like frozen by those anxieties. It's called worry bandwidth. Anyway, and so you just are frozen by these anxieties. They lock you in place. So just to remind ourselves about what we talked about idols before and how they're fickle, right? Idols are fickle. You can be a top charting artist one year and now you can't sell stuff. Your M. Night Shyamalan is my perfect example. At one point, that guy could do nothing wrong making a movie. He made Unbreakable, and he made The Sixth Sense, and then he made Signs, and then he made The Village, and it was still okay, but it was like, maybe something's weird. And then all of a sudden, this movie called Lady in the Water came out, and it was like, I think M. Night may have lost his touch. And then he created Avatar, not the blue one, but the one about the Last Airbender, and it was considered the worst movie ever made. It's horrific, it's just so bad, and M. Night, just for however long, couldn't make a movie anyone cared about. But at one point, his movies were box office gold. And then now, iPhones, there's a new one comes out every single year. Every single year a new one comes out. And so you have to keep replacing them. They're fickle. You can't always have the newest, you can't always be on top, and you can't always be the best. And so Jesus is trying to protect us from this idea we put on him. That when we consider the reality of this worry of maintaining the top, of being a top charter every year, of always having the newest, the best, of all these different things, we begin to worry about those things. So here's a question, and I want you to think about it, and then give me your honest thought here. Did Jesus ever worry? Because it says here, don't be anxious, don't worry. But did he ever worry? AJ's nodding. Where did he worry, AJ?
Mount Olives?
Sure, John 11. That's the first one I have written down. Right? John 11:33. Go ahead and turn to it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You don't have to go too far. John 11:33. We'll see if you can hear it here. When Jesus saw her weeping, this is not the Mount of Olives. Sorry, AJ. This is after Mary and Martha. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also were weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Anyone catch the worry in there? He's deeply moved in spirit and troubled. The Greek there is the word worry. They just don't translate it as such, right? Where was it directed, though? Okay, where was it directed? Read it again. Where is that worry directed? Anyone want to hazard a guess on this? I'm teaching freshman and sophomore Old Testament right now, and so I need you guys to be more alive than they ever are, right? When Jesus sees her weeping and had come along, Jesus was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Where was the worry directed? Okay. Was it directed to self-concern? Was he worried about himself? No. Okay. No, it's other-oriented. How about this one? Mark 14. Go on to Mark 14 here. Let's see if we can hear the worry in here. Mark 14:30. Is that 33? Oh man, I just lost my page. Mark 14:33. Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed that if it was possible, this is you, AJ, in that hour this might pass from him. Father, everything with you is possible. Please take this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but your will. Is he worried? Right? He's facing this real physical reality that he's about to face. He's in the garden. He knows he's about to be arrested, crucified, and killed. And he's having this deep worry about what he's about to face. Like if this could possibly not happen, it would be really great because I am a little bit concerned about what's coming next. And the spiritual reality of being the world's sin bearer, this is all bearing on him. And it's created distress and trouble. It's real worry, real anxiety. But the thing here in the garden, right, in the story of Jesus, we talked about this when we did the questions of Jesus during Lent. When he faces this death, he admits his worry, he admits his concern, and where does he go with it? He's sitting there, what's he doing? He's not just like, what's he doing? There it is. Where does he take his worry, Elena? There it is, right? So he takes it to prayer, taking that fear directly to his Father, right? Jesus always had an other-oriented mindset in these worries. So here's the thing. Worry is completely natural. It's part of the human experience. The question is, do you worry or do you not worry? Jesus is saying, don't worry at all. It's not, are you doing it? The question is, what do you do with that worry and how are you going to deal with it? Jesus is speaking to this crowd of peasants here. Remember, if you think he's still in the Sermon on the Mount, he's got all these peasants that have absolutely nothing. No one's talking to them about the future of Rome. No one has anything here, right? These people around him are literally wondering where they're going to get their next meal. Where will I get my clothes next? Where will I get my water next? But he's still saying the principle is the same. If you're self-focused, you'll lose sight of this meaning of life. Your world becomes increasingly small, and you become devastated by this kind of idolatry. Not only will you continue in the poverty, right, but you'll actually have no means of getting out of it, because the more inward you turn, the more bandwidth you tax on your brain with this worry. You become more taxed by those fears that capture the hearts and minds, and you're completely immobilized by it. And you get caught in this web of worrisome ideas and this mindset where now it's difficult to perceive what's actually true about God and what isn't. So Matthew 6:25, and we're going to walk through this really slow so we can catch this. Bring this over here. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what will you eat or drink, or about your clothes or your body or what you'll wear. Is life not more than food, and the body more than clothes? So again, a group of peasants, absolutely next to nothing, but it applies both ways, right? To a group who actually has everything, and to a group that has absolutely nothing. Because even the group with everything still worries about those things. I have a fridge, I go grocery shopping, I've got lunches every week, and still sometimes I go, my grocery bills are getting high. My water bill was last month, right? We have these things, they're still on there. Whether we have them and it's easy to get it, or on the other side, we still carry these same worries. The group with everything worries, the group with nothing worries as well. Because the worry isn't based on the natural need for nourishment or the natural need for covering, right? Nobody was worried like, Jesus, if you don't provide clothes, I'm going to have to go to church naked. But we have thought, right, that if I don't wear the right shirt, if I don't cook the right meal when these people come over, if I don't drink just the right amount of alcohol, right? So maybe someone will see, maybe I shouldn't drink any in front of these right people. We have those same thoughts. So think about two-dimensional realities of people in American culture. We're so given to materialism and vanities. We're so driven by the external. It's not that the external doesn't matter. It's dangerous to try to diminish the need for an external and create this tension where the only thing that really matters is the spirit. I think the way that we treat our bodies, the way that we act is all really important. That's true, because we're a body and a spirit. We're getting way off topic here. But what's revealing is that deep idolatry of this external need, right? The desires for the approval of others, the giving of ourselves to what people really think of us, and this is what we do. We worry what we're going to eat. Am I eating the right foods? Am I drinking the right things around people? Have I cooked the proper meal? At the last church I worked at, I dressed like this, and the number of times I would hear from people that if you would just put on a tie, you would just be so much better, and it would just be that much whatever. You see what I'm saying? Suddenly these externals become the thing. One of the greatest causes of anxiety and that bandwidth tax in our brain is dieting. It's a really big anxiety. Do you know how many people I meet who are just beautiful, healthy, normal people who say absolutely horrific things about themselves? Just awful. You would be like, what? If only I could just lose 5 more pounds, I'd be the ideal me, right? What's driving that? It's not driven by a desire to be healthy. It's driven by a desire to be physically appealing to others. It's style over comfort. Skinny jeans are not comfortable. I lost all my jeans last week. They were all in the wash. I had to pull out a pair of jeans, and they were skinny jeans, and I had to take them. I could barely get them over my ankles. It was really embarrassing. They're not comfortable, right? But I used to wear them because I was deeply insecure to make sure I looked like a millennial who worked at a church. I just really had to have that look, right? This desire to be needed in such a way. I made sure that if I went to conferences, I had the right T-shirt and the skinny jeans and the hat and the whole shebang. I had to do it, right? They're not comfy. I chose the wrong thing, right? We're so broken in those different relationships. This is the reality, that we're anxious about all these decisions. We're not all anxious for the same reasons, but we are all anxious. And it's driven by the same sort of deep, self-centered desire that Jesus is talking about here to protect yourself from. That the world is temporary. The esteem of the world, the pinnacle of what is normal now, the pinnacle of being on top is temporary. And Jesus is trying to drive us to what our master is and where our values and our visions of these things belong. And that when we come under the tyranny of these false gods that are fickle and change, it destroys us and it creates these anxieties. Because even if you had everything you could have ever wanted, you woke up one day and every dream you ever had had come true. Picture it right now. Put it in your brain. You wake up and everything. You have everything you've ever wanted. It's all perfect. Nothing is wrong anywhere, and you have a new anxiety. What is it? It's the fear of losing those things. That's your new anxiety. I got everything. Now I got to keep it. I got to maintain it. This destroys our ability to live in God in any given moment. If you give yourselves over to it, even if you try to live with God, if we try to apply that idea to Him and see Him as this fickle everything else, it destroys it. Jesus is getting at this. Jesus is the ultimate, the pinnacle. He already knew this was an issue. He knew this was going to be an issue in humanity. He saw it in the people he worked with, he was around every single day. And he says, basically, you've got to look where your priorities lie. You've got to look at what the center of your affection is. What's your supreme love? And if your supreme love is God, then the other things in life will take their proper place. This is what he's getting at here. When we fall into the trappings of idolatry, when we worry about what we eat, what we drink, what we put on, we're concerned about these as vanities. So as followers of Jesus, we have to get back to what actually satisfies the human soul. What actually is not the praise of man. Think about what I said last week. We're paraphrasing Paul in Galatians at one point. It's Galatians 1:10. Paul says this, and I wrote it, and I said, if I was a people pleaser, I wouldn't be a follower of Christ. Paul says, am I seeking the approval of man, or am I seeking the approval of God? Because if I was a people pleaser, I wouldn't be a follower. If I were trying to please man, if I was trying to please the people around me, I wouldn't really be serving Christ fully. This is the reality that Paul sees. This is what Jesus is getting at. You can't serve Jesus and be a people pleaser. You can't give yourself to idolatry and still fulfill the kingdom mission. And he's using these illustrations from nature to paint this picture, this distinction between paralyzing worry and trusting. 6:26 through 27. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they are? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? This is not a passage about if you trust God, you will never go hungry. We're going to smack the prosperity gospel right in the face here. This is not, if you just follow God, everything is going to be perfect. Because there are lots and lots of Christians all over the world that actually starve to death every single day. This isn't a passage about birds don't die because of don't die of starvation. Right? What Jesus is saying is that birds fulfill the things that they were created to do. They don't sit around paralyzed by the anxiety or their ability to do or not do something. They're working in an unconscious faith. They're doing exactly what they were created to do. They live in the exact way they were intended to exist. Do birds worry? No. Right? Birds might be looking over their shoulder for a cat, but that's not worrying about finding food. That's just like what nature is. Right? Jesus paints this picture for us. He wants us to live and move towards this childlike faith, this unconscious faith. That you trust God, you step out in faith with Him, and the outcome of trusting in that is actually stepping out and doing the work you were called to do. This is not about just hold still, stand right where you are, and trust Jesus. He's going to take care of it. If you just stand right here, platters of food will come to you. Everything's going to work out perfectly. It's not a call to passive laziness. Birds are hard workers. I knock down so many bird nests in my gutters. They are relentless nest builders. They are hard workers. They don't stop doing what they're created to do. Right? They'll survive. They'll build another nest. And yet, we're given to the fact that we're made in God's image. And we're meant to be in relationship. And this ability to think abstractly, and we think about ourselves, this self-consciousness is one of the greatest gifts that we have. It's also the greatest curse that we have. Because under the fall, the self-consciousness becomes this damaging reality where I'm paralyzed by my fears of what might or might not happen. I'm frozen in place. Have you ever had something you do, a hobby or work, whatever it is, suffer due to the fear that is not even based on a rational reality? You're like, I would do it, but dinosaurs might, whatever, I don't, like, you're so frozen, you're good at it, but you're just frozen in something that's not even possible, and you can't even fathom doing it. I've done that. I'm like, I don't know, I know I'm pretty good at this, but I'm what if I blank, 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 and I'm frozen, I can't take the next step. Jesus is saying that fear is driven because you have the wrong affection. You've put the wrong thing to be supreme. That if you trust God with your life, if you allow to face difficulty, and you can see it with this new kind of hope, this new kind of confidence. Anxiety does not add to human life. Think of Adam's curse. He was, no one in here did Old Testament with me, but Adam in Genesis, it says, from the sweat of your brow you will eat your food. This is the curse that's given to him. You'll grow thorns, and it says from the sweat of your brow you will eat your food moving forward. Now, that could mean one of two things. Either you'll have to labor really hard in order to get your food. The other one is it's an idiom in Hebrew that more likens to having anxiety. Adam's curse was that you will be anxious that the world won't produce enough. This is what we live with. This is Adam's curse being lived fully out. That we are frozen in place because in the fall the world just won't produce enough. It's scarcity. Adam's curse is about scarcity. And if you want to be a high-functioning person in the world, to live fully in the kingdom, you have to have your mindset to the right master. Adam lost sight, right? The one who energizes and brings the real meaning into your lives, to trust implicitly. Faith is not just a mental belief of who God is, right? Faith is an action. It's an obedience that derives a dependence on God. Just think about this. We're often told to have a childlike faith or an unconscious faith. Ryan is 1 year old. If she could talk, and I picked her up, and I said, I'm going to throw you in the air, what's she going to think I'm going to do? I'm going to catch her, right? I hope I'd be like, with Charlie, I'd be like, Charlie, I'm going to throw you in the air. And she's like, okay. And I'd pick her up and I'll just toss her and I'll catch her, right? It's just completely she's oblivious. There's no thought in her mind. If I wanted to do one of those things where it's like a trust fall where you stand up and then you're like, okay, we're all going to catch you behind. And you did that with Charlie, she'd be like, let's do it. And she'd just fall backwards. That's childlike unconscious belief. You with me? How many of us would go like this? We stand up there and we go, okay, you see the difference. This is what we're being called to. This child, the trust of a child. Trust him with the faith a child has. The unconscious belief a bird has. Just do what they're called to do. That you can move towards that existence that's meaningful. To get out of your own head and towards this real reality. The thing about worry, right? Jesus never says, don't worry, right? Don't worry about others' food and drink and clothing. He never goes, don't worry about what other people have. That's an important point to make. We should be worried a lot about what other people's needs are. If we spend as much time worrying about the needs of others, we would probably find our needs being met too. 6:28 through 30, we wrap up here. Why do you worry about clothes? The flowers of the fields, they don't labor or spin, yet I'll tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If this is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow thrown in the fire, will he not that much more clothe you, you of little faith? I like that he starts with the beauty of the flowers, but also the complete temporary nature of them. Why do we concern ourselves with how we look, how we appear, or how we act around another, right? We're driven by this desire to keep those fickle things happy. And yet what happens is that those things can quickly lose interest in us. The things that we thought would make us happy, the things that we thought would feed our idolatry, right? It changes so fast we can't keep up with it. Think of the flowers. Every year they come up, a frost comes, and they go down. Soon the crabgrass that has taken over my yard will die. It will not come back next year because they pass off. It's temporary. Jesus is calling us, come to those of you who are weary, I'll give you a rest. I know what I was doing when I made you. I love you with an everlasting love. Why, you sit around and you toil and you spin and you give yourself to things that only break your heart. When I want to take that heart and build something beautiful and solid in your life. And as long as you're living in the worldly ways, your days are dark and filled with concern and anxiety. The reality is we can't make ourselves as beautiful as the flowers in the field. Even if we could, flowers wither and die. Jesus once again says, stop living with a self-conscious vanity. I want you to be free of that tyranny of things that are temporary happiness. To have God at the center is to bring liberty. He says, seek the kingdom of God to wrap this up. If you're coming under the rule and you're living according to his ways and that righteousness is being played out in your life, it means that you become a conduit for that love, which draws other broken and lost people into that goodness of God. But if we're self-concerned or self-absorbed, you're paralyzed and you're frozen. And so many Christians continue year after year just wrecked with self-deception, this self-absorption, and this uselessness in their lives in regard to actually helping others. And they're paralyzed by Jesus, and you just want to shake them up and say, Jesus loves you, and he wants you to be free of this frozen, conscious faith. There's a better way. Giving yourself away is not self-eradication, right? Giving yourself to Jesus is not eradicating yourself, but it's a redirection of that energy, which brings about real self-discovery. You become the person you were intended to be. So he says, seek first this kingdom, which means that you trust God with your whole life and become this covenant partner with him, that you make his concerns your concerns and his ways your ways, and you spend time having your mind shaped by his worldview. This unconscious faith to put God at the center of everything and to do what you were made to do and who you were created to be. Not to never worry, but to have the worry be directed by God. Let's pray.